So hi everybody and welcome to our free class. I just wanted to share what my idea was. I was actually walking down the street in the last few days before things got more intense, and I just noticed that my body felt more tense, and that there were shifts already happening in my body and shifts going on with our lives, which affects how we move our body and how we think about our bodies. And so I thought it might be helpful to talk a bit about what's going on and how we can use tools from our body to give us support during this time. So the first person I thought of was Nancy, who I've been working on and off with for a few years. So I will let her tell you a bit about herself.
Hi, everybody. My psychotherapy practice is very body-oriented. And as a trauma-informed psychotherapist, we think about how to self-regulate and how to regulate ourselves and each other. So there's an awareness of present time experience in the body and involving like how to influence actually feeling regulated, stable, secure. So, because so many people that I work with have had a difficult childhood or a lot of trauma, either in their childhood or in adulthood, that's really important to understand how to feel stable and safe and how to use the tools to interpersonally regulate as well, which is really a lot more experiential than it is thought process or cognitive. Yeah. So that's why Erin and I are easily work together, because we tend to be on the same page about these things.
Yeah. So the work that I do is I work with the body and I work with people to help become more aware of how they experience their body and how they can use their body as support for what is going on. So I've been teaching movement for 20 years now, and I've worked with a wide range of people doing everything from rehab exercises to sports work to also being able to help you adapt what you hear about the body to help you fit yourself. So that was also part of what sparked me wanting to do this call, is that one of the things that a class or going to the gym or doing the things that you do does is it holds space for what you're doing. So it gives you a certain time that you do it, you see certain people, and it also gives you a frame often for how often you go and how hard you work with the body. So some of those things for us have been set up. But now with this big change where the majority of people are home right now, that can be a big change in terms of where to fit how you move into your day, and also what are the things that you are able to do from home. So you and I were talking a little bit the other day, and I would love to hear you share with people from your lens some of the shifts that are going on as we all go through this time of change.
Mhm. Yeah, there could be a feeling of being uprooted or untethered
Yeah.
from what we're used to. And even with the news changing all like more often than every day,
Yeah.
that there's a sense of flux. We really have a need to establish our own rhythms, I believe. I think rhythm is an important word,
Mhm.
some kind of sense of the rhythm of your day, but also within each difference. Like I really in favor of having your own day in segments
Mhm.
that are different from one another, and then each segment of the day holding a different rhythm or quality than the others.
Mhm.
So, we don't want to be going at the same, um, playing the same music through the whole day at the same um, pace, like neither frenetic nor really slow, but even moderate all through the day. It's going to start to feel really draggy. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think the rhythms that we need are quite individual too. Like we need to provide for ourselves what's really suits us as a person.
Mhm.
Like for some people who are very extroverted, a lot more contact with other people in the day is
Mhm.
going to be really important.
Mhm.
For people that like really like to do a lot of information processing, then they may be living in this different, needing to process differently
Mhm.
through it, like finding out lots of statistics and research and stuff like that.
Mhm.
By the way, I said that, you can probably tell that's not my cup of tea. That
Yeah.
so it's a lot of personality, like what our personality is, what our individual needs are
Mhm.
uh, for that. But I guess the whole idea for me is variety in the day. Like
Mhm.
like if it could be phases of, like for me, I like to exercise first thing in the day, like for
Mhm.
that to be in the early part of the day.
Mhm.
But I'd like to have a different flavor then
Mhm.
um, after lunch. So I'd like to have a different flavor than in
Mhm.
the evening.
Yeah.
Um, so there could be an opportunity to do all kinds of things that we think we're always too frenetic to do
Mhm.
in our regular life.
Yeah.
Things that I wish I could paint more. I wish I could play
Mhm.
music more. I wish I could create artwork more. There's probably all kinds of things we all wish we could get to.
Yeah.
So that's like it's an opportunity to think of those things and make a nice balanced
Mhm.
rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about a lot on the same lines. I was sharing a bit in a post that I just put out recently that it's gotten me to think about the time during my teens when I was ill, because I was home for about 3 to 4 years on and off. And I mean, it's a really different thing than what's going on. But
Mhm.
one of the things that can happen is when you're in the the world holds your day for you. So
Mhm.
you have to show up at a certain time. You might have, even if you are used to being able to work somewhat from home, you often have a time that you go to the gym or you go and meet people to do a certain thing. And so what I've been thinking about is both during this time period, what we do with our bodies in terms of what kind of like exercise we choose, but also how what is going on impacts how we feel
Mhm.
in our bodies.
Mhm.
So, something that I wanted to offer as as a tool, both within your fitness or your exercise routine, is to observe how something feels at the time that you're doing it, but also how it feels after you do it, and how it feels the next day, and then over time. Because what you're speaking about is being able to find a new flow to the day, and that's going to take a bit of time for people to experiment with what is going to help them feel renewed by the end of their day. And so I would offer that that's tuning in both at the time of doing something, but also afterwards. So an example of that is if you are somebody that needs to watch the news and get that info, there could be a point at which it's feeling good. And then there could be a point where it's not feeling so good anymore. Or it could feel good at the time and then not feel great afterwards, which could mean being able to adjust how long, how much. Or it could also mean you watch the news, it's helping you feel like you're more in the flow of what's happening, but it also might leave you feeling ungrounded. And so you might need to do some movement with your body before being able to go back to doing work from home or going to bed or that kind of thing.
You're really talking about being mindful of present experience, and then having, like, in my training background, we refer to having an experimental attitude. So, I've done this kind of exercise, and then how did that feel later in the day or the next day? That's that experimental inquiry, which is a great attitude to have ongoing.
Yeah.
And that the feedback loop is how we feel in our bodies.
Yeah.
That gives us the information for how to adjust.
Do you think you could talk a bit more about when we had our chat, you were saying something that I thought was very helpful about having a top down and bottom up approach. Could you share a bit more about that?
I think that what we all need when we're helping ourselves, when we're sort of taking care of ourselves, is both a top-down and a bottom-up process. So by top-down, I mean I've thought about it and I've made decisions. So for me, like, I want to exercise in the morning. I want to do some important projects in my home. In the afternoon, I'd like to read or watch a movie in the evening. So that's a top-down decision. It's like setting out an idea. And we all need some kind of top-down interventions on ourselves, because otherwise we might become like wayward, impulsive children if we were only attending to how we feel at a moment. In every moment that we feel like something, we don't do everything that we based on our adult, the wise adult part of us that supervises us and keeps things in order. So the bottom up part is the sensing that Erin is talking about, like the tuning into present ongoing experience and basing our decisions, including that information. So, it's ideal. I think of the top-down process as right discipline,
Mhm.
And that's really a loaded thing, because however we were disciplined as children or not disciplined,
Yeah.
we may have this automatic way of parenting ourselves that has deficiencies.
Mhm.
It may be either too harsh or like too tense or extreme or demanding or rigid or forceful. And, maybe we ignore the information that we're getting from our bodies, much the same as our parents might have ignored how we really felt or what we really needed,
Mhm.
something like that. Or on the other hand, on the other extreme, if the parents were really not, were pretty loosey-goosey, and they weren't really, very organized, and everything could go or whatever, then
Mhm.
we may be allowing ourselves to be a mess of some sort. Yeah. So anyway, that's all about the top down,
Yeah.
but we need to include the bottom up, and we've been living in a culture that promotes a lack of feeling.
Yeah.
Like, so frenetic, so busy, so task oriented, so goal oriented, that the huge missing piece is the bottom up processing. If we're numb and tense, and contracted, then we've lost the
Mhm.
bottom up information
Yeah.
that's so important.
Yeah, it's something that I work with a lot when I teach, is that you want your thinking and your feeling to be online at the same time. And I
Mhm.
would offer that that's a skill that we
Yes.
build, because I find that we in the movement world, there's been a swing from thinking of being able to find the truth in thought to
Mhm.
the body has all the answers and the body has all the
Mhm.
truth. And I would offer that that's not true, that
Mhm.
the body is going to give you a full range of info,
Mhm.
and some of it is going to be supportive to you to act on, and
Mhm.
some of it might not be supportive to act on. And that was the other thing I was speaking about before, to give yourself time,
Mhm.
because when we go from having a routine that holds some of these things for us to not having a routine, then what we're speaking about becomes um, really interesting in terms of how we choose what we are doing. And even when we are tuning into the body, you might be feeling really like you need to eat something. So you feel
Mhm.
very, very hungry, but you
Mhm.
might actually need a nap.
Mhm.
But or you
Or
might feel,
meals.
or the other way around, you might be feeling, oh, I feel really fatigued, and what you need is some food.
Mhm.
So the feeling and the action are not always
Mhm.
linked in terms of how we experience feeling to what we do. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things that can feel like we're off when the routine goes away, is
Mhm.
that the things that hold that for you, like you might eat lunch at a certain time and you might be hungry or not. So you can tune into it, but you have a more set time of the day.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that to me also ties into um, when we move the body in an actual movement, we're thinking about what we're doing. So if I'm bringing my arm up, I'm thinking about what I'm doing, and I'm trying to feel what I'm doing and how that movement is going for me. And we can also flip between those extremes inside of the actual movement itself. So if I'm only thinking like, this is the exercise that I was taught, put my shoulder here, go up and down 6 times, then you could be doing the exercise from a very top-down place and not being able to feel. But if you're only oriented to feeling, it's difficult to gauge the effect of what you're doing over time. So if you did this exercise and it feels great at the time, but then 3 hours afterwards, your shoulder hurts, it might not be the best exercise for you, or you might have to change some things in the exercise, like how long, how fast. So the thinking is very helpful because it can bring feedback that has a longer scale of time to it, to what you're doing. But being able to feel also what you're doing in actual time is also very helpful. So I find this being able to keep the channels open to both the top and the bottom, I guess, in a certain kind of way, which I would frame as being able to use your whole self, right? So we often think of it as like mind, body, spirit, body. And I would offer what I'm interested in is whole body, like whole self body, you know?
Yeah. Sensing in the physical body, like it could be such a simple assist to us, but it's full of complications. Because one of the things we sense in our physical body is experiential memory, which isn't even of the present.
Yeah.
And I know like that's true psychologically, emotionally.
Yeah.
We have a lot of, I mean, it might be in a particular feeling like around the heart or something that is definitely not of the present, but a very strong experiential memory of the past, for example. But it could even be in the whole way that we walk or hold our posture. Could be like a mirror of early life that is just become unconscious and habitual.
Yeah.
So, and I know, Erin, you've talked about even injury and pain.
Yeah.
Like maybe you want to talk about that, how the body can be telling us things that aren't exactly of the present.
Yes, I wanted to talk. I was thinking about this in terms of some of the pain science research and something that I have observed both in my own body and working with people with injuries and with pain for a long time. Our experience of pain isn't necessarily an accurate read of how the tissue health is doing. It could be, but what we experience is also influenced about how we've experienced our bodies in the past, which is what you're speaking about, how we feel about the pain. So if we're really anxious about a certain area of the body and what we think about the injury or what we believe about the injury, all has a big influence on how we experience pain. So our pain is much more in our brain, which isn't to say that it's not also in your actual form, but it's the interaction of all of these things that give us feedback. So that becomes a very important thing to think about when we start to move the body, because sometimes when we're injured or we have pain in the body, not moving the body helps. but sometimes not moving the body makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes being able to move the body can help, and sometimes movement makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where having both your thinking and being able to sense online at the same time is very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that people can try is that what can happen sometimes, and I think it's similar to your field sometimes, is that when you experience pain in the body, say you experience pain in your knee, is we tend to either think about it all the time, like we narrow our field of trying to check the knee, as we move all the time. It's almost like you zoom in to the pain. Or we go the other way where we try to completely ignore the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And what they have found is that if you either really zoom in or you really try to ignore the pain, the brain pain signals will increase. They'll become more activated. So what can be helpful is to be aware of the feeling of the pain so that you don't block it out. You're still sort of giving feedback saying, I can feel this. But you don't completely zero in.
So you have a more moderate relationship with the pain,
Yes.
like a more reasonable, moderated. Yes, it's there, and I feel my whole body is here.
Yeah. So in an actual exercise, what I do is I have people sense and see if they can feel other areas of the body, because we're oriented to be drawn into extremes, either something that feels really good in the body or something that hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And so with what I was saying before, why it's important to sense other areas of the body is that you can actually get neural support for the area that's activated from
Mm-hmm.
being able to feel and hook into other areas of the body. The other thing sorry, go ahead.
Well,
So,
that in itself is regulating. So if, like, this is something we understand from the study of trauma too, that it's inherently regulating of the emotions to tune in to the body and the present experience. So, and what you're saying too is whole body in present here and now. Like, once we start to study that, we can tell the difference between experiential memory or whole body in the present. So if I'm taking a walk and it's all about my knee, then I've lost the plot on the whole body in the present.
Yeah.
Or if I take a walk and I think of all the other things that are on my mind, in a way, I took the walk, but I didn't show up for the walk.
Yeah.
So I guess we're talking about how to show up, to be present in the body. And there's something, like you were saying to me when we talked the other day, that there's something tension producing about what's happening right now. The uncertainty and even the quality of the delivery of the news. There's something very tense and staccato and like even a little chaotic and urgent about the way we're hearing it. So, as you describe, Erin, coming right down to the details of how to attend to present ongoing experience in the physical body, that's a huge value to us at this time.
And I think that for me links back to when we move our body, even if you don't have pain or you have pain, we tend to orient to the extremes within what we're doing. So if I use the example of I'm going to lift my arm, we often feel the beginning of the movement and then the end. right? So we orient to the extremes.
We
And
didn't feel how we got there.
right. So I would offer that it can be really helpful to feel all of the in between. So I'm feeling now, and then now, and then now, and then now. And what can happen also is that you'll find that certain areas are blank, like that you actually don't feel them. And that to me is a signal that you've been oriented to the extreme in that area. And to a certain degree, what's happening with the news is the same thing, is that we're orienting to an extreme, and it's not an either or, and there's all these other things that are still going on for us. And so I'm interested how we can still get feedback and exchange in our body and in our life from the other things that aren't so extreme. And I have found that when I attune to that, I feel more grounded. So something I've been thinking about is sometimes I think the word calm right now can be hard. And so I've been thinking about how can I feel like I can ground? Because if I have a ground, I can feel a full range of feelings, which I would offer we need right now. It's a totally normal thing to feel anxious or to feel confused or overwhelmed. But for me, when I can still feel a ground and roots, kind of, I can still feel myself. I feel more whole, and I feel like I have space to choose rather than react. And so taking that down to the body when you're doing an actual movement, so I'll give that as an example. If you have an injury with your shoulder and you begin to do this exercise of bringing your arm up, see if you can feel it as you're going along, and then begin to observe where the pain begins to increase. So not when the pain is at the top, but just observe when the pain begins to go up. And at that point, you can ask yourself things like, okay, do I feel safe? Do I feel like I'm doing okay here? And there's other things that you can do. You can have sort of smooth breathing. And you can also decrease your overall tone. So what I mean by that is if I have an injury, I can just hit pause for a second and we'll back. So if I have an injury here, what can happen is I'm preemptively bracing, right? So the first thing is to be aware of your body before you start to move. So I just have my arm here and I'm just starting to sense my body. And if I'm doing an exercise with my shoulder and it's injured, that's when that zooming in happens because I'm afraid. So before you even move the arm, zoom out so that you can feel some of the other areas. Still feel what's going on in the shoulder, but don't have that be the only spot. Yeah. And then as you start to move the arm, see if you can keep that going where you're feeling how you get there. You're feeling the other areas of the body. And if you begin to feel the pain increase, see if you can adjust some things within the exercise, which could be the speed, which could be actually speeding up a little bit or going even more slow. Could be having your breathing come a little bit more calm. And it could be also being able to decrease the overall tone. So I could be doing the exercise, but really gripping through that area. So in real time, what you can do is open being able to sense, expand what you can feel, observe how tense or how relaxed you are, because you also don't want to be completely flopped. So you're experimenting with what tone is going to activate pain for you. Yeah. So these are some of the tools that I give people, because it's not always what's going on in the health of the area, like the health of the joint. And it's also not always the rightness of the form of the exercise. It's all of these other details that I would offer are more like trying to tune the body than just do the exercise. You know what I mean?
Well, even if there wasn't pain or injury, to spend time moving like that is highly meditative and would bring one into such presence in the moment. So it has its value. It has like an emotional regulation, or it has the value of regulating our activation, which might otherwise be expressed in tension and compression, and or this kind of laxity in the body as well could be expressed that way. So I think it's a value, like you work with a lot of people recovering from injury, but I think it has an inherent value anyway.
Yeah. And that was something I was thinking about for people, because there are actually lots of great online options right now. And I would say if you're working with somebody that has helped you in the past, or you do a class, if they're putting their work online, that's a great option. There's also lots of other options online. What I would add to that is that an online class is sort of a top-down thing. It's an outside right? It's an outside form. So, and it's different than in a class, because often the teacher is going to tune to you and give you feedback and change the speed, and it depends on the format of the online class. But if you're doing an online class where you're just going along with what they're doing, what I would offer is to put more tuning to your body than what they're doing.
Yes.
So often what happens is we are doing something to tune into the body, but it's similar to what you were saying about going for the walk, but you were just thinking. You can move your body through the whole class and get some perhaps support for your, being more fit or healthy in that way. But it doesn't necessarily help you tune to yourself. And I would offer, even people that are not injured need to adjust all exercise forms to themselves. So our shapes on the outside are different, and our shapes on the inside are different. So what that means is that how an exercise looks on somebody and the timing that they are going to do it in will be different for you if you're finding the same kind of support that they are. So you can experiment if you're doing things online. Either take breaks, or you can put things on pause. You can also do, half the amount, or either decrease the speed or even increase the speed, because there's some movements that are harder when you do them really slowly. So faster isn't always more in terms of how much demand it requires. The thing is to orient more to yourself and to the form. And then you can use these other tools to gauge, how are you feeling? Do you feel safe? Do you feel like if you do this now, you're going to not feel great afterwards? Or you don't know, you're going to experiment with it and see how you feel tonight. And then that might give you a different choice in the next few days. Yeah. So, because I feel like that it was great. I was actually hearing some news, and they were talking about really trying to keep people being active was one of the biggest things that people can do. And that was one of the things that sparked me wanting to do this, because as soon as you do something quite different and you do something new, particularly if you're not going to receive any interactive feedback, you know, like one of the things that's great about being in a class is hopefully who's doing the class will ask you how you're doing, will ask you how it feels. And so that gets you to think about it more. And if it's not feeling great, they will give you things. But if you're doing an online class, you might not have that, right? So it's a different way to orient. So, yeah.
There's so much in such a simple invitation to sense your own body in the present. There's a lot more we could talk about another time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think this is good. We can end here. I'm going to actually link an exercise on at the end that you can do. All you'll need is a ball. So I can talk a bit more about that, and then you can give that a try. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this with me, Nancy.
And thank you. It's been an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Okay, hopefully I'll see you soon, but it was really nice to see you like this today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.